Hi guys, and welcome to the weekly armchair. I was just having the crack in there before we come on, and it's starting to feel a bit like probably a bit of an electric bloody chair at the minute with this carnage after last night and potentially what's going to happen this weekend. So that to one side, I'm delighted to be hosting this for the first time for the weekly armchair. So I'm going to try and be my best today to be positive. It's going to be tough after last night and like I say, potentially what's going to happen this weekend, but. Failing that, I've got some guests with me who hopefully will keep it positive. Mark, how you doing, mate? You okay today?
Good, yeah. Well, good as good can be. I tried to get it out of my memory straight away this morning when I was in work. So, yeah. What can you do?
Yeah, we move on, mate, don't we? Hopefully, we move on.
It's part and parcel of being a Manchester United fan, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. Maisie, how you doing? You all right?
I'm well, thank you. Hope you are well too, considering the result last night. But yeah, try and keep it as positive as possible.
That's the aim. That's the aim, definitely today. Nathan, how you doing, mate? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. And I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to be the least positive tonight, I believe. I'm going to be throwing some truth bombs out there.
Yeah, I think you'll have a bit of a challenge on today, but we'll all try our best. I think we've got a couple more people waiting to drop in. Gary's here now. How you doing, Gary? You're okay, mate?
Hey guys, how are you?
Yeah, good. We were waiting for the Liverpool fan. I don't know if you're it or not.
I am, yeah.
Oh, great. Wait to make an entrance, mate. So anyway, we'll get on to which I'm sure you'll have a big smile on your face, mate. But we'll get onto some of the topics tonight because I know we've got a few big topics. Obviously, the major one for the Sunday's game, which we'll get onto at some stage. But I've got a few other topics which I've been sort of asked to speak about tonight, and I think the obvious one is last night's kind of, well, what do you call it? Car crash, chaos. From a neutral's perspective, an unbelievable game, but in the end, it's a massive drop of 3 points. Mark, I'll come to you. We were having the crack before we sort of came on. Do you want to start, mate? What do you make of last night? Really, do you take any positive away from that?
No, you can just kind of take positives in regard to some individual performances, particularly obviously Garnacho, Anthony. I know I said it last night. I thought he had a relatively good game. I'm not saying he was absolutely excellent, but he played much better than he has in the previous couple of months. Willie Campbell, I thought, played very well when he came on for Johnny Evans, and Johnny Evans in return also played well when he come on. Decimated in injuries, unfortunately, and that continues to be the trend coming into the big one on Sunday. I think more than ever before, based on the previous FA Cup game, it was hit and miss whether we'd come out with a result or not. But come Sunday, obviously, it seems like the writing's on the wall. Hopefully, obviously, it's not the case from a Man United fan's perspective, but Gary has a little smile on his face there. I'm sure he'll have something different to say in regards to what he thinks the potential outcome will be on Sunday. But football ultimately is a funny old game, isn't it? So God knows.
Best to unmute me, Mike. There, I was going to say, yeah, I totally agree with you, Mark. I think there's a few little bits of positives out of there. I think Garnacho had a fantastic game, but some huge negatives in terms of attitudes and characters again, isn't there? So, yeah, that was a disappointing thing, really. Maisie, on to you. What was your sort of take overall on the game? Was there any sort of positives to take from last night, or have we got to be worried?
The only positives you can mention was definitely the academy boys, especially Garnacho, Mainu. I think he had a good game as well. I actually think Willie Cabamba actually had a decent shift when he did come on. I don't really think he did do anything really for me what raised a lot of alarm bells, and I was a bit surprised to see Varane starting anyway. Not to say he shouldn't have started. I was expecting Willie to probably have started more than Varane, but it's just a shame we've picked up on the two injuries. Just the same as what Mark said, it's just more about individual brilliance. It's just the same old repeat story every single game. It's getting at this point with Man United in terms of the same mistakes constantly being made, but nothing much on the following game what's changed. So very frightening times for Sunday, let's just say.
Yeah, it's not. Again, it's it's not great, is it? I think that I'm trying to glean personally some positives out of last night. I think there was a good second half, to be fair, from us, but then obviously we dropped off a cliff. But Nathan, I feel like I'm going to get some home truths here, mate. What was your general feelings of the game? Again, the penalties for you. Were the performances good? Garnacho's performance, I thought, was good. But what was your overall take, mate, on last night's game?
It's so disappointing to lose a game in that manner, but it all comes down to just basic game management. It was clear that just wasn't the case near the end. Unfortunately, the second penalty for me wasn't a penalty, but you can't take away the fact that it might have been coming. A lot of people were saying it was destined to be a draw, and when it went 3-3, it was like, okay, is what it is, away from home. But to lose in that manner is just such a bitch, and it just comes down to the fact that there's no answers anymore in that sense. Like for me, for such a long time I've been such an advocate for Ten Hag, and I still am to an extent, but there's just so many errors and so many just basic issues that need to be sorted before we can even talk about anything happening. It's just so disappointing to lose that way. Again, there was some good performances on the pitch. It was a shame to see Evans have to go off. I don't know whether I assume he went off injured. There was an injury to that, I assume. I haven't actually heard anything. But yeah, it's just basic game management just wasn't there in that respect. But yeah, it's just not really much you can do about it now. It's not the confidence boost we were hoping to go into Sunday. It's a bitch. That's for sure.
So, I mean, I will come to Gary in a second. I'm sure he's smiling inside going on to this topic, but from a neutral's perspective, I'm sure it was a good watch. But just to stick on Ten Hag for a second, then Nathan, from your perspective, I mean, I suppose you can't really. I mean, I don't with the manner that we lost, but first half performance, maybe do you put a little bit of blame on the manager there with that, or you kind of putting blame on individual performances and characters on the pitch?
I think it's the first half performance was probably a mixture of the two, but if the longevity of the situation we've been in it's down to individual performances. It's down to players not pulling their weight and certain people throwing their arms up in the air, getting the whenever a decision goes the wrong way when they should be knuckling down and making decisions go the right way. It's such a disappointment at the moment where you've got players that were unbelievable last season not pulling their weight this season, and you've got our captain this season who's not the player he used to be, who's just got the all the time, and it's just getting petulant and childish, and it is such an irritation when you're watching him play, because the ability he's got in Bruno Fernandes, and he just as soon as a decision goes against him, he's throwing his arms up in the air like the petulant child he can be, and I think definitely the first half performance yesterday, probably a mixture of the two. But I think that over the course of the season, it's just been down to individual players. It really has for me.
Yeah. We'll get on to Sunday's game, and obviously, a bit about the game from the FA Cup, really, and the contrast in terms of what we're seeing at the minute, and from that, and the worry that we've probably got at the weekend a little bit later on. But Gary, just on to you from last night. Then, looking at that from a neutral's perspective, from obviously, you're wanting to see United sort of fall off a cliff, I suppose, coming into the weekend, and it looks like that might have kind of happened, I suppose. But what do you sort of make from a neutral looking in at that last night?
Like seeing you go 2-0 down and then bring it back to 2-2, and then all of a sudden you're 3-2 up, and I thought the game was over at that stage. Like, I was obviously watching from my phone because Liverpool were playing in the meantime, and then once the match finished, I switched over, and like yourselves, I couldn't believe what was happening. Like, I completely agree with Nate. It wasn't. Neither of those penalties were penalties. The first one was the clearest dive ever. I don't know how VAR didn't interject on that, and like no one was picking. I seen pictures of, I don't know if it was Mason or Bruno pointing at Palmer at the edge of the box. they knew what was coming, and yet no one acted. So seeing that, you're kind of like, in-game management is just not there from United's point of view. Like last night, from the outside looking in, as much as you have your Liverpool tinted cap on, you're just at the same time, you're kind of like, you're your own worst enemy. And that's what happens.
Yeah, do you think we're still suffering from that a little bit? I mean, obviously, from a Liverpool perspective, I suppose you look at your squad and think there's a couple of leaders in that since Henderson's still gone, there's still characters and leaders. And do you think that's something that Man United lack a little bit at the minute?
You look at who your captain is. Like, I never considered Bruno a captain, and I said it to Keane when he did get the armband that, like, all that he ever seems to do is complain. He never actually leads from the front. I know that doesn't only make him a leader. Like, you have to be a leader off the pitch as well, but he should have been the one running out and doing it. Like, you've seen other players, like, the likes of Rooney for years, he used to always grab like the game by the scruff of the neck if he could, like, and that's the type of in-game leadership you need. So it does seem like there's a lack of leaders there. I think Harry Maguire he's a leader on the pitch for you, as much as United fans don't like to hear it. Varane is a great defender, but he doesn't have the in-game presence that, say, the likes of your Maguires have.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think we're still suffering from that kind of uncertainty with Harry Maguire getting the captaincy. Then is he not the captain? Is he the captain? And then Ten Hag coming in, and it sort of was a little bit undecided at the time when he came in, and I don't think it's really ever settled. And the characters that we've got around us, I mean, some of Casemiro's challenges yesterday were, suspect, really, from an experienced player with as many caps as he's got for his country and the things that he's won. It was a little bit surprising considering, but I think you're right. I think it is kind of a leadership problem that we've got at the minute. Mark, do you sort of agree with that? Is that something that you think was a big part of what happened yesterday in terms of just certain characters just grabbing hold of it? I mean, you mentioned Evans had a good game when he came on, and it's a shame he got injured, and I think Nathan mentioned it as well.
That was it, but I think, like, ultimately when I said, like, Evans had a good game, like, defensively, because I think, like, we were under pressure. Like, I know people come out and say, we played relatively well in the second half, obviously prior to Chelsea's goals, but I think, like, Johnny Evans had a good game defensively when he'd come on, based on the fact that, Chelsea have thought, they had the upper hand in the game, obviously, at that stage, even though it was 2-2, obviously, started the second half. So for that 15-20 minutes he was on, done relatively well and showed leadership qualities in that time frame. However, some players obviously were found wanting. Casemiro, like what you said, been one, and they referenced that last night. I know I keep referencing it going back, but when professional, people with professional opinions come out and say, his legs are gone. Well, then last night was case in point. Like I said, on last night's pod, you had like Casado and Enzo basically, running rings around them. You had young Conor Gallagher in there as well. A lot of players with, like, Premier League pedigree and, like, very, good players, albeit in different seasons that they've had. So I think, like, there's a lot of deadwood still to ship out of Manchester United. We can touch on several issues that we have, but, like, that midfield that started last night, like, they're not going to do much damage to the top sides. And that's no disrespect to Kobe Mainoo, because, like, again, like, when you're resting your rolls on an 18-year-old's shoulders, like, he was still finding his feet. There's a reformed sense of sadness in that, almost, as a Manchester United fan, because, like, we're talking about a lad with promise. This fella is now near the finished article, and then he's been absolutely wafted into a season of capitulation beside indifferent players due to the amount of the level of injuries that we've had in the squad. Where Casemiro obviously started last night in return, I think us being ignorant still expect the Casemiro of last season and yesteryear to, put in a good shift in the performance last night. There's one stage, I think, where he went in to do Enzo, basically, and Enzo, drifted by him. He could have done it with his eyes closed, and I just said to myself, this is exactly what people are referencing. Like, we've no strength and depth in that midfield, and someone that's literally gonna, hurt, the opposition. I mean, from a tactical point of view, defensively break and play up. I mean, beside Mainu, because that's ultimately the job he's had to be handed at the moment, unfortunately for him. Which again, like I said, is sad to see from a footballer perspective, because he's such a good talent, and I'm sure Gary would agree. You'd have him in that Liverpool squad. I'm not saying he'd start week in, week out, but such a good player, and we unearthed the gem. But as well as that, how long do you keep a player that caliber if it's a case where we're literally the club we're at the moment? Again, reverting to what Nathan had said, like, I don't mean to sound ignorant, but we're just, we need to get a stronghold of the football club altogether, so we can keep players the likes of Mainu and again Garnacho. Again, I know it referenced last night just in terms of Madrid potentially sniffing around, but sometimes there's no smoke without fire. When you hear it from several media outlets, you start to think to yourself, like, there's obviously a sense of truth in this. Obviously it'll take a big check to get him away, but like, if you want to be a club that turn over a new leaf, these are the players that you want to be wrapping in cotton wool. Let the dead wood go. I know there's obviously several players that will potentially leave in the summer. The likes of Tony Marshall and again potentially Casemiro, albeit still that couple of years in the contract. But these are players that aren't going to bring the football club forward. Liverpool had an indifferent perspective in terms of letting the likes of Jordan Henderson go last year. They let Fabinho go. Players of the caliber like Sadio Mane, and just re-energize the squad with different talent. Like, we just don't have that whirlpool, nor do we potentially have the pulling power. I don't know. I don't know where we go, being honest with you. I know you referenced earlier on in regards to Ten Hag. I'd said it last night. I'd love for him to do well. Again, you're that much as a United fan. But sometimes, like, the writing's on the wall. And at times, he's nearly creating his own demise, particularly with comments. I'd heard him come out today just in regards to Rashford. I think Fabrizio Romano, I was just seeing it on his Instagram. And he just said that Ten Hag had come out and support Rashford, saying, his current form is starting to show a bit of promise, and he's turning into the player that he potentially was last year. Like, are you on the wind up, like? Because no other Manchester United fan is going to think the same. And if that's the truth to be told, I know you don't believe everything you read, but just, like I said, ultimately a demise for himself if that's the case.
I think you're right. I think it's great to see that he's trying to sort of defer issues and defer blame and trying to make it positive constantly. But for me, a bit of realism sometimes is just what we want to hear. The manager coming out and seeing that he's disappointed, seeing that he's a bit pissed off with the players, and just telling it as it is sometimes, especially after results like that. Constantly being sort of deferring that blame, for me, is just kind of, it's frustrating. It is frustrating.
You'll get more fans on your side. Look, I know it's modern day football, and there's a lot of a lot of players who literally like live in fairly cuckoo land in regards to the opinions of themselves. But I said last night, if you asked Bruno Fernandes to his face, do you think you had a good season? If he turns around and says, I think I've had a good season, get rid. Like, it's such an ignorant basis of your self-worth because you've had a poor season. Like, there's not many Manchester United players who can turn around with their hat on and say, you know what, I've had a good season. So in regards to Ten Hag, you'd have so much more respect from the supporters in general if he turned around and said, you know what, Marcus Rashford hasn't been at the capabilities he's been at this season. The ability he showed last season was like venturing on world class, his goal return and his performances at times. So, I just wish there was more managers of that caliber. I'd say, you know what, he's been poor. He'd tell you that himself, rather than wrapping Marcus Rashford in cotton wool and basically saying to him, you know what, like, I hope you show a bit of promise after this, because he was absolutely piss poor when he came on last night. No one can disagree, and done absolutely fuck all in the game. So like, people can't be turning around and wrapping them in cotton wool. Like I said, like, we're not talking about a child anymore. Rio Ferdinand was right in what he's saying. I know people constantly go off about Rashford because he's supposed to be a shining light, Manchester born and bred, and a potential captain in there. At 26, 27 years of age, like, this is where you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, do I want to be at this club, or do I need to move on myself?
Well, you brought me on to quite a controversial topic, I suppose, which I've been asked to bring to Gary's door. So we'll work round for Nathan and then Maisie afterwards on this as well, but I suppose in a slightly different way. But just on Rashford, Mark, so I appreciate those comments. Just just is it the manager, Gary? Is it getting the? I mean, when Ollie had him, he seemed to sort of get a bit of a tune out of Rashford. You know, is it would Jurgen Klopp get a better tune out of Rashford? Would you take him at Liverpool? What's your kind of general thoughts on it? Or are we just seeing a player who's not quite good enough?
I don't think he's good enough. I think even if any Liverpool fan turned around to someone and said, a United fan and said that they didn't think Rashford was good enough based on one season's performance, like Louis van Gaal brought him on the scene. Like he turned Trent inside out so many times I can't count. So and Trent at the time was considered a very good up and coming right back. Now we see where he is as a talent. So you can't really judge him on one season, but I do think Klopp seems to get consistent performances out of players. If someone's down, he'll take him out of the team for some time and then slowly bring him back in. But Klopp's way of criticising would say that he's had a bad turn, but we're playing him hopefully to find a bit of form. So I do think he would probably get a little bit more out of him. But is it the way United are set up with your injuries? You've as Mark was saying, you've a non-existent midfield as well. Is he kind of going, let's just get this season over with? So I would think it's down to the manager myself. Like he's not supporting him enough, I think, and I don't think that bumper contract has helped him much either.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I mean, the jury's out on it for me. I mean, Nathan, I'll come to you. Cheers, Gary, for that. I mean, it's just. What's your views on kind of Rashford as a whole? Is it a combination of Ten Hag's not getting the best out of him, or is it himself? Is it I mean, obviously there is a player in there physically. He seems to have everything that you need in a player. But then you look at Palmer last night. I know he's scored a couple of spot kicks, but on the pitch he was good. You look at Foden. Has obviously progressed. He's still young, 23, 24. What's happening to Rashford? Is it just the manager? Is it the system? What is it? Because it seems to be an obvious attitude, really, doesn't it? I mean, we all see it. Pundits see it. It's pretty obvious to a lot of us. So, what's your views?
It's a piss poor attitude. Basically, it's that he's not putting in the effort that he should be. The player we saw last season, it was obviously, if that's all we get out of him, that's his peak. Then it's pathetic. It's a complete disrespect to us as a club and as us as supporters to show what you can do one season and then just to not really give a toss the next season. Like I saw clips today roaming around of him jogging in the middle of the pitch, and it's just so disrespectful to that badge that you've been at that club since you started. You've come up through the academy. You come onto the scene and gave us all hope as if this was going to be the next big world-class player, and he gave us snippets of that last season, and just to completely turn it off. I mean, that is the $1 million question. Is it what has caused this sort of downturn in form? Nobody knows. I can't honestly believe it's the manager, because he's had to deal with other uncertainties in other players, and he's dealt with them the best way he thought possible with the Ronaldo situation and the Sancho situation. But to come out and in support of Rashford after what we all watched last night, it's just a case of they're all overpaid prima donnas that can't take a little bit of criticism. If like Mark was saying, if he would get so much support from other supporters by coming out and saying, no, Rashford's not been good enough, and he knows that, and he needs to work on it, and he will be back, and we'll all go, okay, we're putting your trust in those words, but it's not helping the situation at all. And
do you worry a little bit with? I mean, Mark mentioned Mainu there, and I've seen this happen before. I mean, I'm not saying your Cleverleys and your Welbecks were anywhere near sort of that standard, but we've seen this with young players coming through before, where we'll push them in quite soon, and obviously at this time now, not around bleeders, not around players who would normally sort of be picking up young players and giving them a chance. You should really be dipping in players, for me, 20, 30 minutes into a game and learning the trade through that. We're asking these players to be in big, massive games for long periods of time. What do you fear that same situation might happen with your Garnachos and your Mainos of this world as well in our team?
There's an element of that's probably going to be the case, because we've been forced into that situation where we've all been saying since these players have come in on the pod, everyone online has been saying, if you're old enough, you're good enough, or you're good enough, you're old enough. And it's a case of, but actually you make a good point, that there was points in the past we've been bringing in young players and they've excelled because they've had older, experienced players around them to build up their confidence and bring them back down to earth when it's necessary. And we just haven't got that in any of the dressing room at all. You've got players that are all exactly the same in their attitude. They're all overpaid prima donnas that just, they're not going to bring you back down to earth. They're going to tell you how nice your car is and how expensive your watch is and how fucking shit your hair's looking or how good your hair's looking today. Like, we don't give a shit about your hairstyle or your car or your watch. We just want you to score a fucking goal. That's all we really want, and just put a bit of effort in. And it's just not the case for any of them at the minute, and it's disappointing. You know, we can all go on about the fact, oh yeah, but we scored 3 goals. Yeah, but it's the 3 points that fucking matter. And if you've got the shitty attitude from players, it's just not worth it. And if the Mark said what, several players, I would, the whole starting 11 for me last night would be out the door, apart from maybe Dallo. So 10 players for me would probably stay, be sold, and I would probably keep Dallo because he's the only one that's really shown anything. Him and Mainu, I suppose. But again, it's a case of Mainu's still young, he's still learning his trade, and he hasn't got those older, experienced players to bounce off. And that's what's scary at the minute.
No, I agree. Yeah, Maisie, sorry I've kept you out for a little while, but just on back of what Nathan said there, do you sort of agree with what he said in terms of Rashford? What would you be doing with Rashford at the end of the season? Would you sort of be willing to let him go, or do you feel like there is still something in that?
When we look at Marcus Rashford, when he first broke into that Manchester United team, he broke out based off injuries in that Europa League game, and he was a standout player. And you seen what Rashford done, like when he scored against Manchester City, and when he relegated Aston Villa, and when he scored against Arsenal. Like, we looked at that player in season 1 and we thought, wow, this is what a fantastic talent we've got here in Marcus Rashford. And I just think, for me, the ceiling of Marcus Rashford back when he first broke into that Manchester United squad was so high. We expected so much more. And I think from what we have seen when he first broke in, overall, from then till now, he should have done a whole lot better. And it's not just this season, or we look at 2 seasons ago under Ralph Rangnick, the only man who was actually willing to drop him because he wasn't good enough to be playing. He'd rather have started Anthony Elanga, and I think that speaks a lot of levels. We've had loads of managers under Rashford, and I don't think really, no one really got a great rhythm out of Rashford. They might have a couple of good months with him, and then he goes a bit downhill. And I probably do agree. It's not just Rashford. There's loads of other players in that squad, and it's a very unbalanced squad with all different types of managers, players in that squad. It is full of players who's full of egos, and I just think that contract itself really did not help the situation. I know people is linked to PSG, for 85 million, and when you look at that contract, I can see Nathan's like sell, but I would even say bump it up to 100. PSG know how much money they can afford him. He's still got 4 years left on his deal. So we do need to be a bit more. We need to be a bit smart when it does come to his selling him. I did say this time last season that last 2 seasons ago I would have probably sold him. But right now we need to look at the whole squad in itself, and based on what's going on with Erik ten Hag, we do need a big massive clear out. There'll be definitely some players who I'd sell a lot more than others, but Marcus Rashford, I think he's been absolutely poor this season, and the fact that he can't even run just speaks a lot of levels. He can't even track back. It's absolutely dreadful, to be honest. And for a man who's supposed to come from the academy, and he said, my mother rejected a big massive contract just because I'm a Manchester United fan. I think that kind of riled a few people up to say, well, if that's the case and you're supposed to love this club, why are you not acting like it? He needs to show that he really does care about the club and put them actions onto the pitch, as well as he's saying with his words.
Yeah, I agree, Maisie. I mean, for me, I've seen it a lot. We talk. I think a lot of fans talk about players coming into the squad and why it doesn't sort of work. Why do we get Sancho's in? Why do we get the sort of Di Maria's in? Why do we get these sort of names in that we think are going to be hitting the ground running, and they just don't? I think it's winning mentality. A lot of those players have always looked up to somebody else within the teams that they've come from. And you look at Rashford, and he came into that team when we still had a Rooney, we had an Ibrahimovic, we still had players around who were still there, who were winners, who've been there and done it. And I think we're looking at a bunch of players here personally who are all looking at somebody else to sort of pick up the slack when we're not doing well enough in games. And unfortunately, there's no one else there. They're the ones that are supposed to be picking up the slack. And bless Garnacho last night. He's the only one that seemingly wants to sort of step up and do a little bit and take the game by the scruff of the neck. But obviously, he can't sort of do that by himself, and then he gets subbed anyway. So I don't disagree. I think it's going to be an interesting one for Marcus Rashford this summer. It's all going to be down to him whether he wants to fight for a place or whether he wants to just kind of move on and make it easy for himself. So I'm sure we'll find out over the next few months. So we'll move on. Slightly different topic, random topic really, in terms of the rivalry. I think we'll all be kind of unanimous, I'm sure, on this one. But which is bigger, United v Liverpool or El Clasico, Barcelona, Madrid? Gary, I'll come to you. What's your views on that? Do you think it's
I think it's a slam dunk for Liverpool and United. I thought the rivalry peaked with Barca and Real with Messi and Ronaldo. Now, I do remember the time when Figo left Barca to go to Real, where he got a pig's head thrown at him at the Nou Camp. But there hasn't been the fire and that rivalry ever since. Look at Liverpool in the 90s and the noughties. No matter what, we always turned up at Old Trafford, and vice versa. Let's take the 7-0 out of the way. There's an awful lot of times he turned up to Anfield. We were at great momentum, and he turned up and he put in some performance against us, and in the cup as well. So it's if it's a rivalry just built on just I wouldn't say hatred, but just the will not to let the other team win or the other city win. It's a city rivalry as well. So it's, for me, it's no competition. It's Liverpool, Man United. It's the biggest rivalry in the world.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's more based. It's based on the two clubs than the personnel that are in the teams. And I think with a Clasico, it's a little bit more of that who's in the teams than it is about the two clubs. But Mark, we'll come to you. We'll come across to amazing down to Nathan to finish off. But I'm guessing you're the same as Gary. It's the Liverpool Man United games are a lot bigger than the Madrid Barcelona ones. Would you say?
Yeah, well, that's it from our perspective as well. I was only a little sprog growing up in the early 90s, and I was just, it's funny really how I started sport Manchester United. It was literally, I know I'd referenced it before, but I live in a council estate, and we had 2 channels on the TV. So obviously Gary had noticed, being Irish, I literally had RTE 1 and 2, and Champions League games are played on the obviously on the Tuesday or Wednesday night. So that's how I started sport Manchester United. But within that, I just started to absolutely hate Liverpool and every single one of their fans, even me friends. So, however, I still have ultimately a respect for the club as a whole. But obviously from my perspective, that's Manchester United and Liverpool is the biggest rivalry that I obviously personally know, and I absolutely hate the games, especially obviously when they come along. But it's great when it obviously turns in your favour, just to get one up on them. But like I said, respect for them genuinely. But definitely a bigger shout than Madrid Barca from my point of view, anyway. Yeah.
I mean, I remember the sort of the Ronaldinho games were sort of like when Ronaldinho was knocking about. They were the games I sort of remember when I watched any El Clasicos. But yeah, for me, it's just it'll never be the same as those games. As Man United Liverpool games for me, it's just there's so much riding on it and so much nerves, and I think that for us is just it's just huge, isn't it? So no, I agree. Maisie, what's your feelings on it? I'm sure probably same as all of us, but memories on those games.
Yeah, definitely. It's always going to be Manchester United, Liverpool, the biggest rivalry out the two. I'd even look at against Man United versus Man City, play against Liverpool. That's the game I always want to beat more. just because of the rivalry between the two clubs and the hatred between the two clubs and the memories what they have. And I think for me is, as much as I dislike Liverpool, you do got a respect for everything that they do, the history they have, with all the way going from Bill Shankler. They built a fantastic team back then, and they've got a good team now under Jurgen Klopp, and we've got fantastic memories. We look at like Wanfield, for instance. What a fantastic game that was, and when Berber got a hat-trick against Liverpool, they're going to be the memories you look at and you absolutely love, and you always get that good feeling in your stomach going, oh, come on, like we just like beaten your biggest rival here. And I just think like you just get so much excitement, so much buzz, and you feel sick throughout the whole 90 minutes, especially when it's 0-0 and you feel we could see it at any minute here. I just think it's, honestly, I really love the Liverpool game in the respect of what it really means, especially being born bred Manc as well, and I've always grew up disliking Liverpool, disliking City as well. So it's always been a fantastic memory for me, especially, and it's not been as good memories for the past couple of years, I know, but the best one was probably the most recent one in the FA Cup. But no matter what, even when we're at our best and Liverpool's not, and Liverpool are at their best and we're not, it's still such a 50-50 game because anything can realistically happen. You can, but I always say that if a player doesn't turn up against this kind of game, you ain't good enough to wear that badge. So I always have more of a judgmental perspective of the players than I do for probably most other games. But going on to when you mentioned the El Clasico, I just don't think the El Clasico's been nowhere near as good since Ronaldo and Messi, to be fairly honest. It's just downhill. I think a lot of people's probably lost respect for Barcelona as well, as with what's been going on with them, money problems and stuff. So, but I think it's a well-respected derby and what the two clubs are about, and how they've turned into the clubs they are, and the massive rivalry itself.
Yeah, cheers, Maisie. Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, it's like I say, I do respect the other two clubs, but I just don't think it comes close for me. But Nathan, what's your views on it? Obviously, lots have changed over the recent years, but I mean, it's still the biggest game, surely. Even in world football, surely it's the biggest game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a case of you've got the two biggest clubs in English football going at it, and it is a case of it just anything can happen in those games. It's either a case of, like the Liverpool game in the FA Cup, when everyone just assumed it was going to be an absolute slaughter, and it ended up being an FA Cup classic. So yeah, it's a case of you look forward to these games, but then when they actually come around, you feel sick and you don't want to watch it. But it's a game we all look forward to. If they could put it as an FA Cup final every year, people would tune in just for a Liverpool Man United trophy, because it is the biggest rivalry in this country as well as probably all over the world. People look forward to these games, and people have grown up with supporting Liverpool because of their successes, and then vice versa, people have grown up supporting Man United because of their successes, and now it's sort of we had that period of 10 or 15 or 20 years where we absolutely dominated English football, the same as Liverpool did in the way back when. And it's now roles are reversed where Liverpool are on top and we're sort of struggling down. And we still look forward to these games because you just don't know. And like Maisie said, the players need to be drummed in once again that this game means a lot to the supporters, whether you're Liverpool or Man United. So if you don't turn up, you don't fucking deserve to be there. So if you don't turn up on Sunday, you might as well go looking for it elsewhere, because it's so important to us as supporters.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I mean, they're funny old games, aren't they? I mean, it's like getting a hangover and saying you're never going to drink a drop again, and then next weekend you're having a pint. But it's they're weird games, aren't they? We do sort of relish them a little bit. I mean, we'll get on to Sunday's game. That's the next topic anyway. So Nathan, thanks for that, mate. You've led me straight onto that one. Obviously, we were fairly optimistic, Gary. 3 weeks ago, had an international break. I'm going to blame the break for the drop off in form, to be honest, because why not? really optimistic. I mean, it had me nearly in tears off the back of that game. Thought we'd lost it going into it. Couldn't believe we were going to lose it. Sort of 2-1, and for us to turn it around. And again, it was another one of those games for the neutral. I'm sure they were on the edge of the seat, but I mean, it's a different sort of setup this time round. You know, are you a little bit more kind of off the back of the last 2 games we've had, and I suppose the performances you've had off the international break? What are your general feelings on? We're going to do score predictions at the end, by the way, but just generally the feelings of the game. Kind of like, are you apprehensive? Obviously, you've still got a big title to play for as well, I suppose, from your perspective. So, how are you feeling for the Sunday's game?
I'm really nervous for the game. Like it is because of obviously no matter what, the FA Cup match is still going to linger in the back of your head. Like, you know, I suppose the one big difference that we have this time round than we had the last time, like we've loads of players coming back off injury. Like the squad is an awful lot fuller now. You know, I think come the weekend it's only going to be Trent and Alisson that are going to be missing. Another two big massive losses, but we've managed to cope without them quite well. And I think our attacking football, like Darwin Núñez, is just, he's after getting so much better in the last couple of months that like everyone's terrified of him. You could see when we played City, like even when we played yourselves, like, you know, you were quite scared of him in a way. Like United fans were screaming at the player defenders to get on Núñez because they didn't want him to have any space. So I am nervous about the game though, because it's not one I can turn around and say we're going to go there. It's not going to be a 5-0 or anything like that. There's going to be a score in it, if anything. Like, you know, it's going to be basketball. It's going to be one end of the pitch to the other, and I look forward to it. I think it could be a great game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think the one big advantage that we've got off the back of our poor form is that we're at Old Trafford, and I think that in itself will be a massive bonus to us. But yeah, I can see why you're nervous. You know, you're obviously fighting for a title, and hopefully these players can sort of get their ass into gear and get ready for it. But Mark, what's your? How are you feeling for the game? Are you up for it? Are you apprehensive after last night? How are you feeling? I mean, it's, as we said, it's a big rivalry. It's still a big game. It's, you know, it's the game we all look forward to. But I think these players have shown that if they try, they put some effort in, they can get a result out of Liverpool. Are you positive about Sunday, or is it just kind of?
I'm not, and I don't mean to be overbearingly negative. It's just, again, based on, if I just look at the back line versus like a very informed Liverpool who have players coming back, like what Gary had referenced, and as well as that, yeah, have the likes of Mo Salah and all back to full fitness, and Núñez playing well, and McAllister and players of that caliber. You know, I just look, again, football, like I said, it's a funny old game. You never know what kind of game you're going to get. Like what you would reference, Reece, I think like the biggest benefit from a Manchester United perspective is that we're at home come Sunday. Because if we were in Anfield and we, again, had a back line with probably Maguire and Willie Kimball at the back, no disrespect to either players, but and how many other centre-back parents that we had for the year, but I just think that Liverpool are just obviously a very strong fit, and I'm not overly confident going into that game in comparison to the FA Cup game, again, where I wasn't overly confident, but at the same time, I just think that, you know, we played very well in comparison to obviously the last 2 games, if you want to go by the result obviously against Brentford and obviously against Chelsea last night. I'm just saying that like international break effectively killed the momentum based on that probably the performance of the year from our standpoint, but at the same time, yeah, look, I'm not overly confident, but again, like football's a funny game, so you know, God knows what can happen come Sunday. Like Manchester United obviously will have to be at their absolute best, no matter what player has chosen to put on that jersey on Sunday. Like what Maisie was saying, it's the case where you don't turn up Sunday, and again, a reference before, some of these players are literally fighting for the United careers. That's exactly where, you know, as a fan base, we're at the moment. So, like, this is a game to stand up and be counted.
Yeah, no, definitely, Mark. I mean, no, I totally agree. I think it's going to be a difficult selection process for Ten Hag. I think he's got to look at probably the team that maybe roughly started last night. You know, he's not exactly kind of spoiled for choices either, to be fair. So he just needs to know that he's got players who are gonna battle and going to fight for him. But Maisie, how are you feeling about it? Are you kind of a bit quite apprehensive, or are you? There's a bit of optimism there. Do you think that if these players do get up for it a little bit, that we actually might get something out of this game? How are you generally feeling?
Don't get me wrong, when it does come to a derby, you could beat anyone. You could be the worst team in the Premier League, and if you come against your rival, you could still beat them. It is one of them, and it's based on our injuries. It would either be like an Anfield where Manchester United will turn up and go or get a 0-0 draw, or the back line will get absolutely humiliated, because I'm sure, based off at the moment, Harry Maguire is probably our only fit senior centre-back. So that raises a lot of alarm bells in itself, that we don't, because we're going to have to be playing Willie Cabala there as the centre-back role. Not that I'm going to be discrediting him in any kind of way, but we're going to have to play Scott McTominay as a centre-back, or shift Casemiro as a centre-back, because we know that both of them have experience in playing in that back line. So it is quite frightening when you do look at it in that respect. But we need to look at it. This is a positive comment, so we need to look at it's 11v11, and we just need to try and play into Liverpool's hands in a kind of way, because Liverpool, they are fantastic in possession, and they do have some fantastic players, as has already been touched on. McAllister's having an absolute fantastic season in a Liverpool jersey, and Szoboszlai, he had a great start at the beginning, and he'll want to turn up as well, especially after the FA Cup situation. And then Conor Bradley is another one who I think has been absolutely fantastic coming into the Liverpool squad. So they've got some great talent, and with the possession that they're going to have, they are going to put a lot of pressure onto United. So we do need to remain calm and to try and block out any attacks that they do have. And if we do that, I think it probably will benefit us overall. But it's just a matter of, can Manchester United can Manchester United keep letting them have pressure onto them, or is it going to be ended up once they score, that's it? So it's a very frightening for sure. So we'll just have to see on how it comes about. As much as it sounds negative when I say it, but I know probably a lot of United fans will say it as well. But if we do come out in a draw, it's not the worst result in the world either. Especially against a Liverpool team who are wanting to fight for the title.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think obviously we're at business end of the season now, aren't we, as well? And I think, we saw a little bit of kind of nervous energy from them last night. I think there was a little bit of that from Man City the night before, until Foden got them over the line. So obviously they're all sensing that they're very close, and any kind of slip up could obviously on Sunday could play into our favour with the nervous energy hanging around the title. So yeah, definitely, I think there's an opportunity there if we do to step up a little bit. But equally, obviously, we all know we've got to kind of step up to the mark and put some effort in. But Nathan, what's your kind of feelings on it, mate? Are you, despite what all we've said about last night and obviously the game before and everything else and his attitudes, do you sense that the players might just put in one of those performances that we see every so often and have another kind of FA Cup type arrangement against them, or not?
No, I don't, to be honest. I think it's going to be a case of they're just going to go out for damage limitation. They're going to try and put all the bodies behind the ball, stop Liverpool as best as they can. And, it's a disappointment to predict that sort of thing or to think like that, but it's just the way that it is at the moment, with the confidence so low after the two previous games and having so many injuries out. It would be nice to see the players turn up and play for the badge, but it's just not what we've seen, and it's been really, really sad most of the season to say that sort of thing, but it just has. And we can all rave in the glory of the 4-3, but it's just, we can't just keep thinking about that particular game, because we it's just not how it always works. Form does go out the window in these games. That's why we won that game, because everyone wrote us off in that one, and everyone's probably written us off in this one. So it would be nice to see us prove the doubt was wrong, but unfortunately I just don't see it. I just see it as They're just going to put all the bodies behind the ball, try and stop Liverpool as best they can. And if Liverpool get the early goal, it could just be another, ridiculous scoreline, or hopefully it'll just be damage limitation. And maybe we'll see a little bit of that game management if we do go 2-0 down in the first half, try and keep it at 2-0 at least, and just not make it look ridiculous. And if we take out a few Liverpool players and get them injured for coming into the end of the season, that would be great as well. Because to stop them, if they beat us, then that's fine. But if we can take out, like Mo Salah, McAllister, and whoever else, get them out for 6 or 7 months with a nasty injury, that would be really satisfying as well, because then at least they won't win the league. That's the main important. I think that's the most important thing for all of us. We've written off our season, so just stop Liverpool getting the wank fest of Klopp's last season. To get a few of their big players injured would be, the icing on the cake for everyone, I think.
Yeah, well, it would certainly be that. I mean, it's just, I think for me, I don't know if you agreed, Nathan, or anything with this, but I think it's just, if they put in a performance and then we did come away with a decent result and a decent performance in that game, you just feel a little bit kind of robbed from some of the poor performances they've put in previous games, and you think, and I think I felt a little bit that from the FA Cup game, as much as that was kind of a one-off kind of, obviously it's a cup game, it's slightly different, still a big game against Liverpool, and you kind of wondering where those performances have been for the for the rest of obviously the rest of the season. So I'd feel a little bit pissed off if they put in a really good performance on Sunday. Obviously, I want them to win. Of course I do, but then it just shows again that when they put a bit of effort in and they're just disciplined and then get something out of a top team. So we'll see. I'm quietly optimistic. I think there's enough quality in the team if they're disciplined and they're doing the job to upset Liverpool. And equally, Liverpool can quite easily get a comfortable result over us as well. So again, I think like Gary said, I think it could be a bit of a basketball game, back and forth. I think we've got a counter attack and hope that we get something out of the game with the pace that we've got. But I think we're obviously going to be watching a game where we're going to be probably under the cosh and chasing the ball for a lot of the time. So it's one of them. But yeah, we'll move on to score predictions anyway. Mark, I'll start with you, mate. Score predictions for Sunday, if you can. You can do something on that one, mate.
That's it. I know, because I'm being very overly negative, but I just don't really see a positive lately. Look, this is what I hope for, all right, versus what I, potentially think what's going to happen. But obviously, I want Manchester United to win.
We're all going to be doing that, mate. Don't worry. Yeah, I think we're all going to be the same boat.
Manchester United to win ultimately, but second of all, look, a 2-1 victory. Again, similar fashion. The past 2 games that we've had, we've conceded injury time goals that ultimately cost us 6 points over the course of 2 games. So, yeah, hopefully a 90-odd minute winner from none other than our misfiring left winger, Marcus Rashford, and I'll be absolutely delighted. And I'll sink about 10 points in the meantime.
Yeah, we definitely have a hangover after that one, mate. But yeah, well, I hope you're right. I do hope you're right. But we'll see. Maisie, what's your predictions?
Any win, I'd be happy with any win, to be honest. I'd even be happy if Harry Maguire scored off his bum. That's literally how I'm feeling right now. I'd take any win, but because we do need the 3 points. That's me being optimistic. Me thinking if we do Anfield, it could be another 0-0. But then when I'm fearing for myself, I'm even thinking it could even be a 3-0 Liverpool, which is absolutely frightening. I've literally got 3 different scores scenarios into my head. Any win, a plus, could be a draw, could be a battering. So I'm in 3 different minds.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly how you feel. So, but yeah, hopefully, like I say, we put in a bit of an effort and get something out of the game. But yeah, Nathan, what's your feelings, mate? I know it's not been the most optimistic of ours, but any optimism on the scores?
I would probably go for a 1-0 to United. Scott McTominay, and hopefully he'll then get a red card for breaking Salah's ankle or something, so it puts him out for the rest of the season. I'll take that all day long. That will be and then Salah will go. Klopp will cry as he normally does because of fixture congestion or injuries, and then he'll then miss out on the Europa League final, and that would be such a shame. So yeah, I'd go for a 1-0 and a red card, and Mo Salah going off on a stretcher or something. I'll take that.
I'll like to see what the odds are on that bet accumulator, mate. But we'll, yeah. Gary, have you got a final say on that one, then, mate? I don't think you want to see that kind
it's
of
a fine bet builder. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah. I'm guessing you're going to be other side of the fence with a score prediction, mate. If I'm going to guess.
Yeah, well, to be fair, no injuries is probably the main thing, but I do think Liverpool 2-1, but we'll concede first and have to fight for it. I do think that we only do things the hard way, so that's the way I think it could turn out. You'll come out of the blocks and we'll concede, and we'll eventually go, right, we actually need to do something here. So I think that's the way the match could go. So I could be wrong.
Well, I hope you are. I hope you are wrong. Well, look, either way, it's going to be, we all love watching the games, don't we? So these rivalries, so it'll be, I'm sure, hopefully, be a good contest, and that's all we want to say from our perspective. I think from a United perspective, and what pleases us as United fans in that FA Cup game as much as getting the result was that we were contesting and we were actually competing. So that's kind of what I hope for. I hope we nick it 1-0. I really do. In the death, as like last time, that'd be brilliant. So I'm optimistic for a 1-0 win. So, but we'll see. But guys, look, it's been nearly an hour. It's been an healthy chat, I think, considering what happened for us last night and the time before. The other night with Brentford, and obviously what could happen on Sunday. But I think we're hopefully remaining positive. So thank you to the panel. Thank you everyone watching as well and commenting. So again, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm sure we're doing a review of the game as well on Sunday. I don't know if there's anything in between, but if there is, then we'll be pasting it all on Twitter and everything. So look out for that. It's my first time hosting, so again, thank you to everybody for being so kind for that. But yeah, well, I'm sure I'll be hosting again. So again, we'll catch you in the next one. So good night. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Reece. Cheers, guys.